You walk, you run, you climb, and you fall again. You crawl, you fight, you break apart tonight. But I am the voice that keeps on calling out to you, lighting up the dark. I turn chaos into art. So if you're falling under, or if you're letting go, don't you worry tonight, I will hold you. Don't you worry, my child, I'll stay by your side. In the middle of it, in the middle of it, I will hold you, hold you, hold you tight. You hope, you dream, you chase, you bleed. A story in these scars are never gone. And you're lost and found, I'm here and now. And underneath these stars, I see just who you are. Don't you worry tonight, I will hold you. Don't you worry, my child, I'll stay by your side. In the middle of it, in the middle of it, I will hold you, hold you, hold you tight. You don't have to worry, you don't have to hide. I know you're weary, weary from the fight. You don't have to fear now, I'm here by your side. And I'm gonna wait here, wait with you tonight. Don't you worry tonight, I will hold you. Don't you worry, my child, I'll stay by your side. In the middle of it, in the middle of it, I will hold you, hold you, hold you tight. Don't you worry tonight, I will hold you. Don't you worry, my child, I'll stay by your side. In the middle of it, in the middle of it, I will hold you, hold you, hold you tight. Hold you tight. Hold you tight.
Ain't nobody stopping. Ain't nobody stopping.
It's Spiritual Sunday night, everybody, and I'm your host, Jason of Awake Souls, joined by the limitless one, Ronnie Harris. How are you doing, brother?
Great, man. Really nice to be here tonight, brother.
Yeah, so let's tell everybody what it is that we're going to be doing here tonight. Spiritual Sunday, I would say that we sort of figured out this topic that we're going to cover this morning, right? We didn't put this one wasn't on our plate for a long time, but it jumped to the head of topics right here because it's something that we come across so often. It's this whole Romans 13, and it has to do with subjection to the government. And so here we are finding ourselves in a situation where mandates are in place, people are resisting mandates, and we just want to go through and make sure everybody understands what we're supposed to be doing, like what is okay, what's not okay. We're actually going to get into detail on this topic, and we're going to compare it to David, who David was king. And so we're talking about authority, and so we're going to be going through Romans 13. We're going to be going through the story of David, and tell us more, brother. Tell us why we're going to get into this. What's important about this?
So, I mean, it is a very important topic, and I remember when it first was brought up by Jaron, when Jaron submitted his claims against the scriptures because of that passage, right? So it came from Jaron. It came from a lot of people, actually. We've been dealing with this over and over again. And the best thing to do is to always use the scriptures, right, to test things and to verify what we should be doing. Right? We can back those up with our hearts. Now we also feel we know when something's not right. Right? We're not supposed to just follow along. We're not order followers. That's absolutely against what we're truth followers. That's what we do here. And it's important that we talk about these issues because people do raise the question. So if it's saying here in the book of Romans that we're to submit to authorities and be governed by them, or we're going to be held accountable, does that mean that we follow? If someone says, kill this person, do we kill them? Right? The Milgram experiment. There's a bunch of different topics that I can bring up. This is a Jordan Peterson topic that he came out heavily on, discussing how all men are capable of killing. And you could tie it to the number of beast also being the number of man, because it is our choices that allow the beast into this realm. He works through us, just like the Father works through us. So it's a super important topic. And then leading to discussing what a leader is. A leader instead of a king. Right now, we're going to be talking about a king, King David. He earned the title king. In the lineage of Christ, you get to one name and it says king before his name, and that's David. And we're going to discuss a little bit about why that he is called King David, so that you guys can understand. And it's important that we know what a leader is, as opposed to someone who is trying to be popular, someone who is put into position because his group of friends think that he should be leader when he doesn't have the qualifications of what a leader is. All these different areas are something that's very important when we have these people out here like Mark Passio constantly trying to parrot the scriptures and then take you off on a dark Luciferian fake light path while saying he calls out the fake light. We have to show you guys that the way that they set these arguments up, like the argument of anarchy, no ruler over us. The truth is we have no king over us right now. That is absolutely true. We do not have a king. We have Christ as our king. That's it. We don't have any other king over us. So does that mean that anarchy should reign in the land? Absolutely not. To think that is preposterous. The weak would get destroyed here. The governing powers that are put into position are there to carry out the righteous laws. And when these men that are in these positions don't carry them out, that is when you rebel. That is when you do exactly what the scriptures tells you to do. Not a moment before it, but after you start to see that, that is what you do. If we didn't have police, it would be the strongest would survive, even though it is a parable of what we have, right, Jay? I mean, the people who are willing to be the most wicked succeed the most here in this realm, if anybody hasn't noticed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So leadership is a topic, in my opinion, that needs a little bit of an overview, where we need to look at it sort of just from an outside perspective and really contemplate leadership as a concept and see whether or not we agree with it, whether or not we see the importance of it. And so to do that, what I would recommend is contemplating what would happen if there was no leadership, if each and every individual just did what they wanted. And so here's a situation where now if we did that now, if I decided I want to drive on the left side of the street and I got a whole bunch of other people to follow me, we're going to be left-siders from now on. We're just going to drive on the left. It would create a problem, right? There would be an issue there. So leadership can create organization that is beneficial for us, something that we actually want. We want the traffic to be going one direction and not to be running into cars head on all the time. This is something that should be important to all of us. So that requires leadership. Right? Somebody has to actually come out and say, we're going to drive on the right side of the road. Or the left, whatever it is. It doesn't matter, but you got to pick a side, otherwise people are going to run into each other. So you have to have leadership in some ways, form, or fashion. And so we have the Holy Scriptures where we saw a group of people that, like with the Israelites, we had leaders like Moses, that a leader was chosen, and this character was chosen by the Creator for specific reasons. I mean, he knew Moses, like he knows all of us, and Moses was chosen for a reason, and he led. He led the people. He wasn't a king. That was before the time of the kings, but he was the leader of Israel. And then the people wanted to have a king, and so then eventually we get David, and he was one of the great leaders. So we're going to be talking about great leadership versus the leadership of this world, which is miserable, and which one do we need to serve? Which one do we have to follow the commands of? And we're going to make it really clear tonight.
So to just add on to your points there, the way that I said, I'll eat $10. The way that this works is that the governing authorities, the typology of what happens here in this realm, was set up as a mirror image to the governing authorities in heaven, in the spiritual realm. It was a typology. It was a match. It was a mirror reflection. As you hear the Satanists say, as above, so below. And it was put into place for righteous checks and balances, so that the poor, the weak, the genuinely gentle at heart wouldn't be consumed by the ravaging wolves. And when the governing authorities that are put into position, because I want everyone on the other side of the screen to understand right now, he who it is that created you is ruler over this realm. The Most High, Yahawah, YHWH. He created you. He is the ruler of this realm. He is in control. Everything else that happens here is given unto men to make the choice. And every single choice that we make has an accountability to it. So men that are put into positions of power, your government, your police, all these different places, they have extra condemnation added to them. This isn't a game. This is absolutely serious. And they've been given that authority so that they can then be weighed for their decisions. You can't have a good leader who hasn't earned trust. And we in this game are building trust with the Father. He gave us the free reign, our free will to choose. He made us creator beings like him. We were made in his image, it says. Now, what we really need people to understand is we don't have a problem with anybody being a leader that does righteous things. We go and support that. So what we commonly get is because Jason and I are dogmatic and we stand solid on our foundations of truth. We've done the work. We've researched them. We've retested it. We've reconfirmed them. And we come out and we stand upon these points and we put the work in. Okay, a tree is a tree. It grows. It has roots, a trunk, branches, leaves, and sometimes fruit. A good tree, you can tell it's healthy and strong and big. And a weak, sickly one, you can see. But in the world we have today, the weak, sickly ones are the ones in charge, right? And it is going to change. And what people really need to understand is during these times, these end period times, when we're actually transferring into the next age, we're at the level up, where a bunch of the stuff that we've had to suffer through is going to be taken away. What are you spending your time doing right now? What is it that you're putting in front of your eyes? What are you doing on the other side of the screen? Let's step outside of who's a leader. The leader is the person who leads, who does it righteously, makes the right decisions, and people follow the leader. That's what a leader is. What are you doing on the other side of the screen? How are you fighting for truth? Who are you picking up? Who are you lifting up? If you're here and you say you're a Christian, you need to be like Christ. He went around loving people, loving them. And he didn't just give out trust. It was spoken to him. And you know what? The scriptures constantly say that it's the Gentile nations who constantly choose faith and righteousness over the said chosen vine. And we're going to be going through that a few times tonight as well, because you on the other side of the screen might think, well, I don't believe in this stuff. I'm not a Ashkenazi. I don't wear the tiny hats. Listen, it's not about that. This is about the creator literally living inside of you. He created you. He knows everything from the beginning to the end. This isn't the first time we've done this. And this war has been going on for 6,000 years. So I just want to inspire people on the other side of the screen. Be a leader. Do the work. Put in the time. Fight for truth. Love people. Right? Be honest and truthful everywhere we go. And that's pretty much my rant tonight. It's very important that people understand that if somebody is a leader and they're not acting righteously, you need to, first of all, call them out, expose exactly what they're doing, refute them with evidence, like we're doing tonight. Anyone that thinks that Romans 13 or whatever is the destruction of the Holy Scriptures because it says to govern unto authorities. No, what we will do is put out a good, thorough rebuking with scriptural evidence, with logic, common sense, and the truth then can come from within inside you on the other side of the screen. You're the one who makes the choices moving forward. Do you want to follow the people that say, oh, because it says to govern, follow the authorities, that, oh, that means that the Masons wrote the Bible? Is that, if that's what you want to follow, you guys are fully well, you can go. You can go. But I'll tell you right now, my heart goes out and I will fight for every single person that the Father loves. I will fight. I will give my life for them. Even the ones who go around blaspheming the Father, I will still die for those people too. So you on the other side of the screen, get in the fight, be a leader, take the reins, get involved.
So there's a little bit of confusion with Romans 13 that what we want to do tonight is help people that know the scriptures but don't know how to refute this against one of the enemies, because Satanists love Romans 13. They just use this over and over and over. I would be surprised if you haven't had somebody try to use this on you if you're a Christian. So we just want to show you the full context of it. We want to help you have the grounding in the scriptures, the whole context, to be able to say, no, this is what it's talking about, and this is the way we need to behave. And we're just going to lay that all straight tonight. So that'll be good. I saw a funny thing in the chat regarding stoplights and mandoozles. So I actually have a little bit of context that I can throw in on this. I grew up in a town that I know when the first stoplight was installed in town, and I was actually a part of doing the concrete work on the street corners where they put in the stoplights. And so because I grew up in a town that I remember the first stoplight showing up, and I was a part of being the construction of it, I do remember the old way. So when that mandoozle came around, I noticed it right away because...
Red on top, green on bottom?
Yeah. Because I was a part of a project with the first stoplight in the town. This was like the big news. This is what everybody's talking about. Our town now had a stoplight in it. When I grew up, it didn't. So we were hitting the big time.
Yeah.
Just wanted to toss that in. Is there
there's one other There's one other topic before we get into that. You were just reading it before the podcast. It was about, was it about something in Canada? And great on the Canadians. Yes, it is about the Canadians. The protests. So here we go. I had my spiritual outburst. I banged the desk. And there was questions that I was asking. And sure enough, I see those questions everywhere at the protest. They're on all the people's trucks, all the cardboard signs, the exact questions that I was asking for. The whole entire realm is reverberating out. So I'm really happy to see that. And they're doing it so peacefully. Jason, why don't you fill people in on what you saw before the hangout? We already discussed this too this morning, right? It came back up.
I do have a couple tabs that when we go to share that we could cover a couple current things like that because they're fun.
Canadians, man. I love Canadians. You know, I was so disappointed in the way that they capitulated like cucks. You know, because I wasn't raised like that. Me and my dad and the people we were around, we bled freedom. We loved freedom. We were like the peacefulest people. My dad's like the happiest guy you could ever meet. He really is. Just loves everybody. But now it just seems like the men just capitulated, and I see a turn. My cousin has also taken her family. Her husband is a truck driver. He does hauls. That's what he does. And they've taken their truck. They've gone to Ottawa. They went this weekend. And it was just beautiful to see. I was so proud of her. I had so much love. Of course, you know, if we don't have demands met, things aren't always going to be so bouncy, jumpy playrooms and nice. But I mean, how can you show the rest of the world that you're just like the best people? You just throw a big party in 1 degree Fahrenheit weather, right?
Yeah, I was shocked by it. So the bouncy house comes up. Yeah, it's a pretty funny clip. We've got a clip of the mayor of Ottawa. And there's a little bit of news. I guess they're trying to cut off the truckers from being able to like refuel. You're not supposed to be able to refuel these guys. You would be aiding and abetting some sort of crime. So Canada's, I mean, it's going back and forth right now, and it's the unexpected is happening each and every day. I didn't expect to hear today that they were going to have the ability to refuel possibly be cut off. Now, so this becomes a turning point. Are the people going to refuel these truck gears, or is this going to shut things down? So it's really a fluid story, and I'm interested. I'm paying attention to it. So anybody that missed it, we'll show people what's going on. Is there anything else before we go into a screen share? Or?
Just say thank you to everybody in the chat, all the people that are lurkers. Please leave a comment if you get anything from the podcast below. And share, like, and subscribe, right? We are your top search for news and information regarding Christianity, simulation reality, and always the flat earth proofs. Only on the YNN News Network. Are you getting? Did you go to the screen share yet?
Going to now.
Okay, I got to set up too. As soon as I know we're off the screen. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. Hopefully we can edify you, share some truth with you, and some of the most important stuff. King David. Want to talk about a king or a righteous leader? Here's one. I'll show you why. Am I off screen now?
No.
Okay. But I can keep talking while you set up, and then when you're done, I can move around too. So yeah, I think we have some new people here. B Shane and No. Shout out to Battery 79. It says Spirus. We got Becca Shine. We got Joseph Bender, Solid Tank, Frank Logic, obviously YD in the house. Solid Tank. We got Jerry. Most of the regulars. We're happy that you guys showed up. Mimi's here. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Keep the peaceful fight up for now. Get those mandates taken down. Let's see if Trudeau can have to forced out. He's ruined his reputation, everybody. Everybody's seeing it now. It's just getting ridiculous now with the way that social media works. The problem with social media is that if you make a mistake, the whole world shares it. Everybody gets to learn about the mistakes that you just made. And Trudeau has just ruined himself with this lie after lie after lie. He's destroyed. He's like one of the worst looking cucks. He comes out and says all these lies, and then everybody else is sharing the videos of the opposite of what he's saying. This absolutely destroys his credibility.
He's literally the butt end of every meme joke right now. Like, I don't know that anybody's ever gone through this type of meme ritual abuse that he's going to go through, because what he did in the world stage and the way it's playing out, woo-wee. Yeah, he's got some reason to be worried. This was pretty funny. So this, I saw this on Godlike. Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson comments on the convoy to the CDC. It's disturbing when you see the protest turning into what looks like some kind of fun carnival where they got bouncy castles and hot tubs and saunas. And, that's hilarious, because we saw another YouTuber that was live streaming from Ottawa, and he had live streamed the bouncy castle out there. I didn't see the hot tubs and saunas, but
we didn't see those, but we've seen bouncy. There was just blocks and blocks of it. It was crazy, and it was so cold. People's beards were freezing. They were just all out there dancing. They had these different DJs on different corners. I was like, wow, this is so crazy, man. I love to see that. I wish I was there. I definitely would have driven. I've been to Ottawa a bunch of times. I would have went there too and just partied it up with everybody, share the love, yell out freedom, right? And of course, you true smack as many people as you can when you guys are at these.
We could play this clip if you want.
Sure, yeah.
All right, so this is like some Canada news here, CTV, and Ottawa mayor. So you get a little bit of context around this.
Mayor Watson, we heard just a short time ago from the police chief saying they don't have the resources. He does not.
What is going on? So that didn't transition. All right, it should be good now.
Really see a way out of this. I was talking to you this time last weekend, people losing faith in the city's ability to get some sort of order back here. What options do we have right now? Are you at the point where you'll have to request the military to come in?
Well,
What? Military?
What?
Oh.
That's against the Constitution.
Military come in for bouncy houses and hot tubs?
Barbecues, people dancing. Canadians dancing.
Keep this in context, people. This is where we're going. Military for that.
I had a good conversation with the public safety minister, and they've provided us additional Mounties that were sworn in today to patrol Ottawa streets. And we have a significant increase in RCMP officers coming in the next week, sometime next week. This is in addition to the OPP, as well as other municipal police forces across the province, to bolster our police services. We've had about 164 Ottawa police officers in neighborhoods, the three high-profile neighborhoods, Centertown, Byward Market, and Lower Town. That is my first priority, is to protect those people, give them some peace of mind.
So he's got 3 high-priority neighborhoods. I'm not familiar with the city, but he's probably calling out, like, his rich people. They get a priority or
Government
something.
people, right?
Yeah.
We saw that the protesters' lawyer has indicated they're willing to put a ban on loud noise and horn honking from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. I hope they live up to that when they get back.
Can't say honk, you get banned from
as a
Facebook
small
too.
gesture of giving these people who have been through hell, quite frankly, some comfort. It's just
Been through
Comfort.
hell?
What?
These people have been through hell? I guess the people that live there, they have to hear the honking. They've been through hell. Yeah, the reason why there's a whole bunch of people that went out of their way to come here and honk is because something's really wrong. Really wrong. Not just in Canada, the whole world, but...
And they feel it. They feel it. They don't know what we know, which you guys on the other side of the screen, they don't do truth research like we all do here, but they still know that there's something not right. And they're going there and they're trying to have their voices heard.
Mm-hmm.
disturbing when you see the protests turning into what looks like some kind of a fun carnival where they've got bouncy castles and hot tubs and saunas, a complete...
That's hilarious, man.
Where the protest turns into some sort of fun carnival. Where they
bring the military in. They got hot tubs.
Oh, that... Just had to listen to all that diatribe just to hear that. That was beautiful.
Let's play it again.
Small gesture of giving these people who have been through hell, quite frankly, some comfort. It's disturbing when you see the protests turning into what looks like some kind of a fun carnival where they've got bouncy castles and hot tubs and saunas, a complete insult to the people who are putting up with this nonsense.
Oh, the poor politicians that are putting these tyrannical laws on the people have to put up with them having saunas on the streets. These people don't live in these corners. These streets are all in the middle of the city.
Mm-hmm. And there's obviously... So if these people set up their campers and built a shed and did all this stuff on the street, nobody showed up, then you would know that there was no support for it. But there is support for it. And I was impressed. I saw that one live stream where that guy was out at night and it was so cold that just his breathing was making the ice crystals throughout his beard. And I know what that's like, and I hate it. So the fact that somebody would go out to be a part of a statement like this, right, and in those types of temperatures, I got respect for it. I got props for that. There are some Canadians that they are freedom fighters, and I love it.
Yeah, used to be, right? And they're peaceful right now. There are videos of men saying that there's a time coming when they might not be so peaceful. So if the protesters can get their act together and get some changes going on, the mandates taken away, the showing of proof of your whatever on your cell phone taken away. These are the demands that I've heard, which they need to go, and they need to have the gyms open. They need to have the kids playing sports. All this needs to be changed as soon as possible. Everyone in the whole entire country should go there. Everyone. That's the only way out of here. Mass protest, mass, what's the other word? Boycott. Just all of a sudden pool everybody together and work together as one team against the New World Order, and we absolutely will destroy them. This will end. This will end like that. The only way that it happens is that everybody has to get together and do it. And I am seeing shades of it. So it is a positive spiritual Sunday. I'm not yelling this weekend and banging the desk. Although these protests could have many dual natures. There could be provocateurs. They could be being led by false groups that are in charge of all this, all the innocent people going along. We're going to see where this goes. We put out our theories on all the different sides, And tonight we actually wanted to bring that they've got hot tubs and saunas and bouncy houses.
But see,
and
there is the side of
free
me,
food.
the side of me that has to ask, who is it that brought the bouncy house? Who brought the hot tub, right? Because
yes, those are great people, right? And again, oh, you made me lose my train of thought with that hilarious supposition. Why did I lose it? That's fine. I just hope
it could be good and it could be bad. So, I mean, I love the idea of having a hot tub there. I don't know if I probably would get in it, but it could also be part of the provocateurs that they could be setting this all up too. So we're watching it with a skeptical eye and a hopeful eye, both of them, right?
Yeah, we're watching both sides. I still lost my train of thought, so we move on. Oh, was it about the free food? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mind. Everywhere that you go in these different corners of these streets, everybody's giving out free food. There's free food and water and drinks everywhere you go in the city right now. Just free, everything. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Like, that doesn't get more Christian-like than anything I've ever seen. The whole entire city filled with people handing out food, playing music, dancing, bouncy rooms, saunas for the people that are cold. This is incredible. This has got to be one of the. It's like Woodstock. This has such a potential if the whole country would just go there. And, you know, Jason, I did sort of say earlier that when the weather gets nice, I could see the whole entire country, every able body who can afford the gas to get there. I say the whole entire country shows up to Ottawa and ends the lockdowns completely. The demand of the people will by far outweigh. Trudeau isn't going to be able to go out there and lie anymore. He will absolutely have to make capitulations. He will have to make changes. And that is only going to happen if we continue to manifest, if we all stand up and fight. There's so many other topics that are happening right now, but we got to get into the scriptures. I'm just ranting.
Yeah, well, we got to get into the scriptures. We got some to read through.
You gonna put the music on?
I will. I don't know. Should we? I don't know. Do we need the? Yeah, I'll put the music on.
Yeah, let's get into it.
There was one more point I wanted to make, and now it just jumped for a second.
Well, I mean, I can talk while you think. So again, everybody in Canada, we need to start like hashtag the entire country to Ottawa, the entire country to Capitol Hill. We got to start making memes and T-shirts, or not T-shirts, but I mean posts. You know, if the whole entire country gets behind it and they all just say no, if you have millions and millions of people that show up to protest this because Trudeau says they're the small minority, if the actual large minority shows up, you absolutely win. You win. The only thing is that you need to be careful of, like the pots and pans protest that was in Iceland, I believe, that actually worked. They overthrew the government and had to replace them all. The people that was replaced with were the absolute New World Order shills. So you got to be careful with who comes into play after this goes down. I'm taking us to beyond. Did your thought come back?
Yeah, just that. So you had mentioned, as the weather warms, the possibility of things more and more being able to be done. I just wanted to put out there, so right now this is a trucker convoy protest, right? So we have people showing up with vehicles, big vehicles, to protest. And it's cold out and they need fuel. So now the government is using refueling as ammunition for a way to somehow shut this down. So I'm just going to say that as the weather gets warmer and warmer and warmer, we need to come up with more and more ways to protest in peaceful ways, effective ways. So this trucker convoy has been absolutely effective, totally effective. But are there more effective things that we can come up with than a trucker convoy? Because not everybody has a semi or a tractor or a crane that they can.
Yeah, more unexclusive.
Right. So I do believe that there is the possibility for even more effective protests going forward than just trucker convoys. I really do.
Yeah, Freedom Stock 2022. Freedom Stock. We should get that going. A live concert with all the bands that can make it there in Ottawa protesting, and you get everybody, millions of people to show up. That'd be great, right?
I got a few ideas. So,
but I just came up with that one. Freedom Stock 2022, right? Get you your rights back. The only problem is if we look into history, rulers and dictators that got rights taken away, people had to bleed the streets red to get them back.
So we'll go through this. We've had 2 commentaries on Romans 13 that we want to consider tonight, that they're good commentaries with lots of great research. We might have a correction here or there on it, maybe a little different interpretation here and there. And
Yeah.
so we've got these 2 commentaries to go through, and then we're going to go through the scriptures on David as a righteous king and
Leader, righteous ruler too.
what you look for in leadership. So this first one, I was just looking for commentary on Romans 13, and this one I think might be the best. I don't know who this site is. I'm not supporting this site or whatever, but we'll take some turns reading, going back and forth. Maybe I'll go through this whole article. You can go through the next one on 13, and then we'll split up the scriptures. But but just jump in with anything that you see that stands out and you want to add context to. So Romans 13 is the absolute favorite chapter. Maybe I can make this a little bigger for people to see. All right. It's the absolute favorite chapter of the Bible for all rich and powerful empires since the 4th century. It's the gotcha proof text for ensuring that its citizens obey the authority of their masters. From kings to presidents, soldiers to police officers, every power-hungry statist loves Romans 13, and with good reason. Romans 13 plainly states that anyone who has governmental authority has been given that power by God. We're going to replace this with Yahawah. That's the creator. That's YHWH. And everyone should obey them because of this. That's what it says. Or does it? So we don't have to actually read the chapter. It's going to be cited so many times here, and we won't have to reread it over and over. But this is Romans 13, 1 through 7 right here.
No music. Is it broken? I see it on the screen, but nobody's hearing it in the chat.
Yeah, it might be broken.
Okay.
Oh no, it's the audio is shut down here.
Okay. I still don't hear it. Oh, I do now. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks
Try to
for
be
pointing
soothing,
that out.
right? It's a soothing night. We don't always have to be banging the desk.
Yeah, let me know how that turns out level-wise. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities. This is Romans 13:1. For there is no authority except from Yahawah, and those that exist have been instituted by Yahawah. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what Yahawah has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Would you have no fear of the one who is in authority? Then do what is good, and you will receive his approval. For he is Yahawah's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. For he is a servant of Yahawah, an avenger who carries out Yahawah's wrath on the wrongdoer. Therefore, one must be in subjection not only to avoid Yahawah's wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. For because of this, you also pay taxes, for the authorities are ministers of Yahawah, attending to this very thing. Pay to all what is owed to them. Taxes to whom taxes are owed, revenue to whom revenue is owed, respect to whom respect is owed, honor to whom honor is owed. So, on the surface, this passage seems to make a few claims that fascist dictators dream about at night. Everyone should obey the government. Yahawah chooses government leaders. Yahawah approves the government's use of violence. Christians can or should work in government. These claims are in fact myths. Romans 13 doesn't undo the rest of Scripture. So, we're going to go through the myths. Myth number 1. Everybody should obey the government. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities. Romans 13:1, right? The New Testament is filled with examples of Elohimly people who do not obey the government.
Good.
The first and perhaps most important example is Joseph and Mary. The parents of Yahawahashai intentionally disobeyed King Herod the Great when they escaped to Egypt. That's in Matthew. King Herod's government decree was that Roman police kill all baby boys, but Joseph and Mary disobeyed. The very fact that Yahawahashai lived past 2 years old is a testament to the virtue of disobeying government power. Paul himself, the author of the letter to the Romans, disobeyed the government on numerous occasions. The governor of Damascus sought to arrest Paul so that he might be executed. Paul disobeyed the authority of government and escaped through a window in the city's walls. In Acts, he even later cites this event to demonstrate his unwavering commitment to Yahawahashai. 2 Corinthians. Ever since Paul started following the way of Yahawahashai, he spent his days in rebellion against governments. He never disassociated himself from these actions. Instead, he boasts about their consequences as proof of his commitment to Yahawahashai. Paul went to prison at least 3 times because he disobeyed the government. Finally, like Yahawahashai before him, he was executed by the government for his disobedience. If Paul actually meant to teach that followers of Yahawahashai should obey the government, he was a major hypocrite. So what is going on here? Let's get practical. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities sounds pretty clear. First, let's examine the word subject. In the original Greek, Paul uses the word hypotasso, which means submission involving the recognition of an ordered structure. The same word is used in verses that say wives should submit to their husbands. Ephesians, Colossians, Titus, 1 Peter. Paul could have used the word hapakau, which means obey, but he doesn't. He uses hypotasso. This difference in words was enough for Paul not to mean obey when he said every person, himself included, should be hypotasso to the governing authorities, because he obviously didn't obey them. Paul could have used the word obey, but he didn't. The only reason Christians ever obey worldly governments is just out of coincidence that doing so coincides with obeying Yahawahashai. Anytime obeying Yahawahashai means disobeying the state, Christians should do so without hesitation, but should do so with the wisdom and knowledge that persecution, arrest, or execution may follow. Examples in Matthew, John, 1 Peter, and Revelation. Peter and the apostles answered, "We must obey Yahawah rather than men." Acts 5:29. So, myth number 2. Yahawah chooses government leaders. So, once again, Romans 13:1, "For there is no authority except from Yahawah, and those that exist have been instituted by Yahawah." So we're going to get some more translation action. Some other translations, such as the NIV, say, "There is no authority except which Yahawah has established." Whether it be the English word instituted or established, the actual word in Greek is tasso, which means to arrange or put in place. Theologian John Yoder compares Yahawah's work here of tasso to that of a librarian. So there's a good illustration here. The librarian does not make the books, does not write them, does not necessarily approve of them, but simply puts them in order. This is a helpful illustration that assists us in making sense of history. During the time that the Romans was written, the emperor of Rome was Nero, a desperately wicked ruler who fed Christians to wild animals as entertainment. Yahawah need not approve or agree with government leaders in order to tassel them. Paul also makes the claim that no authority exists except that which comes from Yahawah. This is consistent with the claims of the rest of Scripture. The Old Testament says that Yahawah is the chief creator Elohim that delegates some of his authority to the lesser Elohims. Yahawah even gave these Elohims, who were formerly on his divine council, nations to rule. These Elohims rebelled, much like humans, and defined good and evil for themselves. This is why all over the New Testament we are told that it is untimely Satan and his demons that rule over the nations of the world as their Elohims. That's in John, Ephesians, 2 Corinthians, 1 John. Authority came from Yahawah, but is being abused by the lesser Elohims of the nations. These Elohims gave their authority to those who worship them, which is how emperors, kings, and presidents receive their power. For Paul, earthly authorities and evil spiritual authorities cannot be separated. They are interconnected. It is upon this worldview that Romans 13 was written.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I just want to point out something here that's key. What we need to understand is the heavenly things that I was talking about earlier mirror the earthly things. This is the way that it's set up. And the condemnation for these earthly things are just the same as they are in the heavenly realm, right? So if people think they're going to get away with anything they've done, they're absolutely not. They're going to pay for it. Heavenly.
So the connection to Romans and Ephesians 6:12 is made here. And then it continues, government leaders are inherently a rejection of Yahawah. Ultimately, all earthly rulers and state authorities are the punishment of Yahawah for disobeying his ways. Yahawah allows government leaders to have their power, but he sent his son to actively work against them. Colossians. In the end, Yahawahashai will destroy rulers in government because they are his enemies. 1 Corinthians. So naturally, Paul's statement doesn't in any way imply that the state's actions are willed or approved by Yahawah. Perhaps more so than any book in the Bible, Revelation illustrates Yahawah's hatred for empire. And then we have, they set up kings without my consent. They choose princes without my approval. They have rejected me as their king. In Hosea and 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel's we're going to be going to read about King David. Myth number 3. Yahawah approves of the government's use of violence. So the scripture that the anti-Biblists are going to quote will be Romans 13:4, 3-4. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and you will be commended. For the one in authority is Yahawah's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. So some people take that it's okay for the violence. But this commentary, right away, anyone can see that at face value, what Paul says here isn't always true. Do governments only punish people who do wrong? Do governments never punish people who do what is right? The gospel accounts, the book of Acts, and even Paul's life stand in opposition to these claims. Yahawahashai and most of his disciples were murdered by the government when they were doing what was right, proclaiming the gospel of Christ's kingdom. Yahawah only has one nation, the kingdom of Christ. Satan rules all other nations. It doesn't even make sense to claim that Satan's nations only punish wrongdoers. So then what is Paul saying? One truth that can be drawn from this passage is this. Even if Christians die by the hands of the state, or at least their martyrdom will magnify Yahawah's glory, just like Yahawahashai's death did, no Christian should fear the evil authority of the state. Satan holds the power of death and executes that evil with the power of the sword. The authors of Hebrews says that Yahawahashai is breaking their power and setting his children free in Hebrews. We were once held in slavery by our fear of death, but no longer. We need not fear nations who wield the sword to death, because we promised resurrection into new life. We follow after a Messiah that willingly laid down his life for his enemies out of love, an action we are called to imitate. Most commentators agree that Paul is merely describing how worldly governments ought to function in this meantime before Yahawah brings them to nothing, not how they do function. Paul knows firsthand by his own experiences and his people's history that rulers do not always reward good and punish evil. Unfortunately, throughout history, many liberal interpreters have used this passage to justify the actions of many evil rulers. It was used in Nazi Germany in the 30s and 40s to support Hitler, and it is often used today in America to support the United States foreign policies. Myth number 4. This is an interesting one. I don't know that we've ever really talked about this, but what about Christians working for the government? Before we get into this, what do you think?
Yeah, if you're in that position, you do it righteously. Every job, doesn't matter what it is. Sweeping, government, anything. You just do it through righteousness.
To be a cop, to be a soldier?
Yes, you do it through righteousness. Of course, there's good people in all these different fields. Okay, there always is.
Well, there's going to be a little bit of a contrary argument here. This passage is often used to support the idea that Christians can or sometimes even should work in some governmental capacity. The thought is that if the government doesn't bear the sword in vain, is a servant of Yahawah and seems to carry out justice, then Christians should be involved. Romans 13 is used to support Christians working in government, serving in the military, and police in the streets. Ironically, Romans 13 stands in harmony with the rest of the New Testament's teachings in that it prohibits Christians from doing any of these things. Bearing the sword, whether in vain or not, is something that Yahawahashai forbids. The only time in all of Scripture where a follower of Yahawahashai attempts to use a sword, he gets rebuked. This, of course, is because Yahawahashai taught his followers never to use violence, but instead to love and bless their enemies. Paul, in his letter to Romans, continues this teaching. Directly before Romans chapter 13 is chapter 12, where Christian living is addressed. So, if you want to take Romans 13 into greater context, you really got to read chapter 12.
Of course.
Romans 12 tells us to worship Yahawah and not be tempted to conform to the culture of the worldly nations we live in. Romans 12, 3-8 tells us that within the body of Yahawahashai, we all have specific gifts for lifting up the church. Romans 12, 9-13 tells us the importance of love and caring for other people. 14-16 tells us to bless and love those who persecute us. 17-21 tells us to never to repay evil, never to take revenge, to feed our enemies, and to overcome evil with good. Romans 13, 1-7 tells us not to be in violent rebellion against our enemy, the state. So that's that first 7 scriptures of Romans 13 that we're talking about right now. 8 and 10 wraps up by telling us that only love fulfills the law.
That's the key point right there.
It is, because that's the context.
Well, and we'll get into a further discussion about what love is, too.
Romans 12 and 13 take the reader on a progression of living rightly from within church community to the local community, to how we live in relation to those who persecute us, to how we live in relation to our enemies. Romans 13 describes our enemies, not permitted occupations. This is grammatically proven by the pronoun that Paul uses. In Romans 12, Paul constantly addresses you. Romans 12, 14-21, while in Romans 13, Paul uses the pronouns he and his. The first part of Romans 13 isn't talking about Christians in authority. It's talking about Caesar and his appointed rulers. So it's a grammatical thing, but there is a case to be made there that this Romans 13 wasn't talking about Christians in authority, and that it was just the non-Christians. Paul believed that Yahawahashai will return to destroy everyone in government. That's in 1 Corinthians. Paul's first century context couldn't imagine Christians taking part in the Roman government. It wouldn't make any sense then, and it doesn't make any sense now. Working in government doesn't exempt a follower of Yahawahashai from the clear command to love one's enemies. A person carrying a sword or a gun faces an unfortunate choice. Love their enemies as commanded by Christ, or kill them as commanded by Caesar. So this commentary makes the point Christians should not work for governments.
I mean, police or military specifically there.
Yeah.
We're talking about raising the sword. The governments don't raise swords. Now, again, there was tax collectors. There was multiple different people that were in the disciple group and the greater group, the 120 that also followed them. And the reason I stated that, yes, a Christian or a follower of the truth could come from any of these fields, right? This is the way. Everybody has the right and opportunity to repent and to change their ways. And again, there will be a different coming time when this is all going to get flipped, right? The tables are going to get flipped again.
So this commentary offers also an alternate interpretation. I found this one interesting. Bounce it off of you, bounce it off of everyone that listens here. It says, no matter which way you slice it, Romans 13 is tricky. It doesn't seem to fit with the rest of New Testament teachings at first glance. Perhaps Romans 13 is so tricky because of Paul's situation. Paul was writing to a church deep in the heart of the world's most evil empire to date. Christians were a persecuted minority known for treasonous sedition. His letters were not secret and would have been subject to inspection by Roman government soldiers. Galatians 2:4-5. For this reason, the letter could have been cleverly written so as to appear compliant with the Roman government, but also so a truly knowledgeable Christian would have no doubt as to what it actually meant. So here below is a possible alternate interpretation.
So again, what people don't understand that don't diligently search the scriptures is you find out that there's multiple levels to the scriptures. There's parabolic meanings, there's a heavenly level and an earthly level. And Paul was a master at writing in these levels. And when I explained to somebody that this was a heavenly concept as opposed to an earthly one, this is what Paul was telling us. He was explaining how the heavenly realm is set up and how this is a mirror. It's very basic. It's just you actually have to do the work.
So here, let's flip it around and take a look at which authorities is Paul referring to. So the early church understood that Yahawahashai was king and Caesar was not. Caesar claimed a false authority by the power of the sword, deception, terror, and murder. Caesar claimed for himself what Yahawah the Father gave to his Son, all authority in heaven and on earth. Caesar was not a valid authority. So what if Paul didn't mean Caesar when he said, let every person be subject to the governing authorities? For there is no authority except for Yahawah, and those that exist have been instituted by Yahawah. Instead, what if he meant the only valid authority, which is Yahawahashai and his body? After all, the correct and only path to full kingship for Yahawahashai was through the cross, not through the sword. So Caesar's authority, bought with the blood of the sword, was invalidated by Yahawahashai's example. According to Paul, Yahawahashai is the blessed and only ruler. 1 Timothy, Acts, James. Yahawah's words to Hosea seem to validate this. They set up kings without my consent. They choose princes without my approval. Hosea. Romans 13 begins to make more sense if understood in this light. A terror for those who do right. Yahawah's true and valid rulers are truly not a terror to those who do right, But does Paul actually think that Caesar is not a terror to those who do right? Not at all. This is 1 Corinthians, another Paul writing. We do, however, speak a message of wisdom among the mature, but not the wisdom of the age or the rulers of this age who are coming to nothing. No, we declare Yahawah's wisdom, a mystery that has been hidden and that Yahawah destined for our glory before time began. None of the rulers of this age understood it, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. So Paul clearly thinks that governments are a terror to those who do right, saying, remember my gospel for which I am suffering, even to the point of being chained like a criminal. In fact, everyone who wants to live a godly life in Christ Yahawahashai will be persecuted. The rulers of Rome were certainly a terror for Paul, who was doing right. So if Paul is referring to Yahawahashai in Romans, then he indeed holds no terror for those who do right. What about the rulers who do not bear the sword in vain? We know from Yahawahashai that anyone who wields actual swords does indeed do so in vain. So Paul could likely be speaking metaphorically. Several places in the New Testament refer to Yahawahashai's words of truth as a metaphorical sword. If Yahawahashai is in view as the valid authority, then his sword would be the truth. All right, so taxes. What about Paul telling us to pay taxes? This is Romans 13, 7 through 10. I don't know if we have read this. Pay to all what is owed to them. Taxes to whom taxes are owed. Revenue to whom revenue is owed. Respect to whom respect is owed. Honor to whom honor is owed. Owe no one anything except to love each other. For the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. For the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and any other commandment are summed up in this word, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law. So this right here is really the nuts and bolts of how we're supposed to behave as Christians. So the first 7 scriptures might have been a little tough for you to figure out. Why are we supposed to pay respect to government authorities? Well, if you're having trouble understanding the first 7 scriptures, just read these right here, because this is what we're to do as Christians. Love your neighbor as yourself. Treat somebody else the way you wish to be treated, right?
So I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
So, love, right? You just said love is the law.
Yeah.
So what if your brother is constantly getting in trouble and doing things that are going to lose his salvation? That's your brother, right? How do you love him? What do you do?
Constantly getting in trouble.
Yeah, I'm just saying you have what do you call the prodigal son, right? And that parable, right?
Yeah, well, what did his father do when he gave him his inheritance before he was dead? So he gave up at least a third of his estate right there, right? And that kid went and squandered it. And when he showed up, he said, go slaughter the fattened cow. We're going to have a party, because he was able to just see that his son had returned to him. And that to him was worth more than any money. So it's a fighting for a person's soul, for their eternal spirit. You can't even put a price to that.
So in my supposition, or not my supposition, but the point I want to bring through, if we go to we can go through a bunch of scriptures quickly. Hebrews 12:6, it says, for Yahawah disciplines the ones he loves, and he chasteth every son he receives. And then Deuteronomy says, so know in your heart that just as a man disciplines his son, so Yahawah also your Elohim will discipline you. Right? Be more as the man you discipline, O Yahawah, and teach from your laws. Right? So, O Yahawah, my Lord, that your judgments are righteous, and that in faithfulness you have afflicted me. So again, if the Father loves you and you're doing things that aren't right, you're going to be disciplined. It's going to happen. And a good brother will do what it takes. Love isn't always about cuddles. It's about being strong, having boundaries, asserting. It depends on the situation. Love isn't always poetry and kisses and hugs. Sometimes it's tough. It's tough. It's disciplinary, right? And anyone who the Father loves, he disciplines. So I just want to keep that as, because everybody knows me. I'm about love. That's what I am. But I also know that discipline and true love isn't always going to come to you white light kisses. It's going to tell you to get up. What are you doing? Go that way, right? You're not going to let your kid run out into the middle of a highway, right? You're going to stop that kid. You're going to do whatever it takes. I just want to continue to make sure that people understand, if the Father loves you and you go like Jonah, you deny the path that you have destined for you, he will do whatever it takes to put you back on that path. And I'm just trying to warn people, the best thing to do is become more righteous, start loving people, putting in the work, doing the effort. Everybody has their chance. We're all here together.
So here's a little discrepancy where I'm going to go against this commentator here. It goes on here, to whom are taxes and customs owed? Paul previously was arrested for practicing non-Roman customs in Acts. Paul does believe that Christians owe Rome that practice. Does Paul believe that Christians owe Rome the practicing of their customs? No, of course not. Does Paul think that Christians owe Caesar taxes? So this is where the commentator is going out on a limb here. He doesn't have anything to really back this up. Sure, tax collectors were hated because the Jews understood that taxation was theft, or extortion more precisely, to a degree. So at some point, if you're going to have leadership, you do need to collect taxes. Now, do they, once they start collecting these taxes, use them unrighteously? Absolutely. So there is a point where taxes, this is a group effort on something, right? A group effort is necessary to have something that one person couldn't do by themselves. And there is a fair amount of taxation, and then there is an unfair amount of taxation as well. There's legal and illegal. In fact, in the United States, federal income tax is illegal based on the Constitution. So, but things like a gas tax or a sales tax, it's not so well regulated by the Constitution. Governments demand money from people without their consent and will use violence and or murder if anyone refuses to pay. But the very definition used to arrest any normal person for committing this action, taxation is theft. Stealing is outlawed because it's wrong. You shall not steal. They're collecting of group money. So group money is like the GoFundMe for the trucker convoy thing. When people want to do bigger things beyond what one person can do, you can pool your resources. So I'm not all with that. And then, see, the enemies of Yahawah. Romans 13 doesn't teach that we should obey governments. We obey Yahawah, not men. Yahawah doesn't choose who is in government. He merely arranges them the best he is able while maintaining our free will. Yahawah doesn't approve of any violence done by any person, whether they are children or not, his children or not. And since government leaders are given their authority directly from the devil, of course, Romans 13 doesn't give Christians permission to ever be a part of any government. Yahawahashai didn't consider human rulers to be true rulers and authorities. He considered them to be his enemies, which he will destroy. He rebukes their supposed authority, and so should we. So I'm in agreement with most of this commentary. I thought it was a pretty good study, but you have another one to go through as well, right?
I think we've exacerbated the topic. I think you've covered all angles of it well enough for me. The only thing, it's interesting that the scriptures outline that all governments are actually ruled by the Satans. So that's interesting. So we see that the rulers of the world are set up by the fallen angel entities, and we definitely should, never do anything that's not righteous. It doesn't matter who it is. If they tell you to put a mask on your, I can't say anymore.
Well, I don't know that
we'll get a strike.
I don't know that we can say that every government has been horrible, because at least when the Americas were settled, when people came over from Europe to like the United States and spread out, I know the Freemasons call it like their great project or their great whatever.
Great work.
Their great work. But what actually happened is there was a group of decent, righteous people, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison. There was a couple people in leadership at that time that actually put together the Constitution that really gave us all the
freedoms, right?
Yeah, the protected freedoms. And that was absolutely new and unique, because I think till that time, all countries were governed by monarchies, right? So it had to be like a royal assent. You had to have kings and queens. And this was like your first quasi-democratic republic where it was elected and people were actually given rights as human beings.
Yeah, it's crazy. It is.
You
want me to screen share?
Yeah.
That was great. Anybody that needs to understand what our position is, Jason just outlined it completely. That's the position mostly, right? We can't agree everything with everything everybody says. But so the scriptures will be, what size are they going to be? So I don't know if that'll work. I don't know how you'll size it, but
I'm going to get that all tuned up now.
So yeah, that was great. I'm glad we went through that. I hope everybody got edified as to what we want people to do, right? So the key things were to love everybody and don't submit to anything that's not righteous. Say no. You're to fight against it. That's the example that was given. That's exactly how we live our lives.
You should be good.
Yeah. So I guess I could start off with this. Before we get into this, it's interesting. I put together some memes for the story of David, but we're going to actually get into the scriptures. But I'll read these ones here. It says, so Saul sent messengers to Jesse requesting, send your son David to me, the one who tends the sheep. So Jesse took a donkey, loaded it with a couple loaves of bread, a flask of wine, a young goat, and sent his son David with it to Saul. And David came to Saul and stood before him. So it's interesting, like, this was all planned. Yahawah had this all planned out. And then, what? That's not in order. Well, it was, sorry. I skipped a bunch. We're going to get into that. Meanwhile, the Philistines, so now we have David standing with the Goliath. The Philistine said to David, am I a dog that you come at me with a stick? And the Philistine cursed David by his Elohims. Come here, he said, and I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air and to the beasts of the field. So David was a young man at the time, said to the Philistine, you come against me with a sword and a spear and a javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Yahawah Almighty, the Elohim of the armies of Israel, whom you have defiled. And this day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. So this is what David was saying to the giant, right? He came right back quick, like that. And then we're now skipping ahead to the battle scene. And it came to pass when the Philistine arose, as the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly towards the battle line to meet him. So now you have David just running straight at Goliath. And then David then reached into his bag and took out a stone and slung it, striking the Philistine directly in the forehead. And that stone sank into his forehead, and the Philistine fell face down on the ground. Right? Everybody's watching. Everyone's banging their shields. And then all of a sudden, David just slings him. Goliath collapses, right? David runs over and jumps on top of Goliath. He grabbed Goliath's own sword, pulled it from its sheath, and killed him. And he cut off his head with his own sword. And when the Philistine army saw this, that their hero was then dead, they all turned and ran, right? And it's not over yet. And then David, King David, then took the head of Goliath, the Philistine giant, and then paraded it all around Israel, and then went back to Jerusalem. And they had this huge celebration with the whole city there just absolutely freaking out, right? Just celebrating. We're going to get into a little bit more of the scriptures, but this is a way that we can take memes and we can add scriptures and we can actually teach people the true history of what happened. You can learn. We can reverse what they did in the indoctrination camps. And you can learn why they call him king. That's what a king does. He doesn't need to be voted in. He chose to go and fight Goliath because he knew he had Yahawah with him. Who was he afraid of? He had killed so many things protecting his sheep, right? So I just really want people to understand the point that David was a leader. He wasn't appointed a leader, even though spiritually he was. He was ordained. Oil was poured over his head. He was chosen, right? But he earned it. He did the works. Christians that go around and they don't do the works. If you're not loving people, if you're not fighting for truth, if you're not leading the way, you are not doing what you're supposed to do. And King David was a great example. This was a wartime leader, right? He wasn't afraid. Neither should any of us be afraid to give our lives for the truth, right? So that's key. Jason, did you want to comment on that before I move on?
I'm just in the chat right now. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. I'll move on. So the next point that I want to bring up just before we get into the book of Samuel, it says this part here. This is from a prologue from the book of Supreme Truth. It says the prophet Samuel mourned for the King Saul, though he knew well that Yahawah had rejected him and an issue from being kings in Israel, right? So there's a problem here with Samuel and Saul, and this was because of his pride and because he did not obey Yahawah and the prophet who spoke in his name. So this is something that we should all be constantly worried about. If somebody's speaking to you with the authority of heaven and you disobey that person, it's not going to go well. We may also read in the gospel that the disciples of the Lord pleaded with him for the Gentile woman of Canaan to send her away, that is, to do unto her that which she desired, for she cried after him. So likewise, I might say that we must mourn for all such deceived men as they think themselves to be the kings in Israel. For they believe themselves to be lifted up above other good men into a lofty and Yahawah-seeing life. And yet they are proud and they willingly disobedient to Yahawah and the law and the holy church in every virtue, the government we're talking about here, and bad rulers. And it says, and like as Saul rent the mantle of the prophet Samuel, they endeavor to rend asunder the unity of the Christian faith, all true doctrine and virtuous life. This is what the governments want to do. Whosoever persist herein, right? They are separated and shut out from the kingdom and of eternal contemplation. Even as Saul was shut out from the kingdom of Israel, but that humble little woman of Canaan, though she was a Gentile and a stranger, had faith and hope in Yahawah and acknowledged and confessed her littleness before Christ and his apostles. And so she received great grace and health and all that she desired. For Yahawah exalts the humble, and he fills them with grace and all virtues, and he resists the proud, right? And these remain empty of all good. So constantly be checking your heart. Are you proud? Are you humble? What is your goals out there, you guys on the other side of the screen? Every one of you, Jerry, Seth, Becca Shine, all of you guys. How are you in your heart? Are you humble? Are you exalting yourself? Do you, in any way, this is constantly telling us to try to always be retrospect and introspective of our own selves. That's very important. I don't know if the screen share is working. It's changing.
Yeah, it's changing, but I'll get it. No worries.
It's interesting, though, that a Gentile woman showed the great faith and got the great grace upon her, right? Like, and this is constantly told over and over again. So don't worry who you are, where you came from, what job you did. If you were in the military at one point, if you were a cop at one point, there's always time to repent. Like, you could be used as a great warrior of truth. That's your calling, right? So am I ready?
You are
this
good.
This is the progenitor to David. And the Lord rejects Saul as king. It goes on to state here, Samuel said to Saul, I am the one the Lord sent to anoint you king over Israel. So listen now to the message from the Lord.
This is what the Lord Almighty says. I will punish the Amalekites for what they did to Israel when they waylaid them as they came up from Egypt. Now go, attack the Amalekites and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. So Saul summoned the men and mustered them to Talim, 200,000 foot soldiers and 10,000 from Judah. And Saul went to the city of the Amalek and set an ambush in the ravine. And then he said to the Kenites, go away, leave the Amalekites so that I do not destroy you along with them. For you show kindness to all the Israelites when they came up out of Egypt. So the Canaanites moved away from the Amalekites. Then Saul attacked the Amalekites all the way from Havilah to Shur, near the eastern border of Egypt. And he took Agag, king of the Amalekites, alive. And all his people he totally destroyed with the sword. But Saul and the army spared Agag, and the best of the sheep and cattle, and the fat of the calves and the lambs, and everything that was good. These they were unwilling to destroy completely. But everything that was despised and weak they totally destroyed. Then the word of Yahawah came to Samuel. I regret that I have made Saul king, because he has turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions. And Samuel was angry, and he cried out to Yahawah all that night. And early in the morning, Samuel got up and went to meet Saul. But he was told, Saul has gone to the Carmel. There he has set up a monument in his own honor, and has turned and gone on down to Galgal. When Samuel reached him, Saul said, "May Yahawah bless you, or be more you. I have carried out Yahawah's instructions." But Samuel said, "What then is the bleating of the sheep in my ears? And why is the lowering of the cattle that I hear? The lowing." And Saul answered, "The soldiers brought them from the Amalekites. They spared the best of the sheep and cattle to sacrifice to Yahawah, your Elohim. But we totally destroyed the rest." "Enough," Samuel said to Saul. "Let me tell you what Yahawah has said to me last night." "Tell me," Saul said. Samuel said, "Although you were once small in your own eyes, did you not become the head of the tribes of Israel? Yahawah hath anointed you as king over Israel, and he sent you on a mission saying, 'Go and completely destroy those wicked people, the Amalekites. Wage war against them until you have wiped them out.' Why did you not obey Yahawah? Why did you pounce on the plunder and do evil in the eyes of Yahawah?" But I did obey Yahawah, says Saul. "I went on the mission the Lord assigned me, and I completely destroyed the Amalekites and brought back Agag, their king. The soldiers took sheep and cattle from the plunder, the best of what was destroyed, to Yahawah, in order to sacrifice them unto Yahawah, your Elohim, at Galgal." But Samuel replied, "Does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying Yahawah?" So this is something that is kind of going along with what we were talking about tonight, is do we obey governments or do we obey the Father, right? So if we don't obey the Father, and we get punished for it. And on top of that, he's telling people right here in the Old Testament that your sacrifices are more for you to eat.
Yeah, well,
they're for you.
When he gives direction, he doesn't expect you to go out and interpret it in your own way and just come up with what you think is the best. He sort of wants
Let's keep all that's good, right?
He wants you to do what he told you to do. So you got to pay attention.
Goes on to say, to obey is better than sacrifice, right? So, and to heed is better than to the fat of the rams. And for rebellion is like the sin of divination, and arrogance like the evil of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of Yahawah, he has rejected you as king. Then said to Samuel, "I have sinned. I violated Yahawah's command and your instructions. I was afraid of the men, and so I gave the in to them. Now I beg you, forgive my sin and come back with me so that I may worship Yahawah." But Samuel said to him, "I will not go back with you. You have rejected the word of Yahawah, and the Lord hath rejected you as king over Israel." And Samuel turned to leave. Saul caught a hold of him, of the hem of his robe, and he tore it. And Samuel said to him, "Yahawah has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today. and has given it to one of your neighbors, to one better than you. He who is the glory of Israel does not lie or change his mind, for he is not a human being that he should change his mind. And Saul replied, I have sinned, but please honor me before the elders of my people and before Israel. Come back with me so that I may worship Yahawah your Elohim. And so Samuel went back with Saul, and Saul worshiped Yahawah. Then Samuel said, bring me Agag, the king of the Amalekites. And Agag came to him in chains. And he thought, surely the bitterness of death is past. But Samuel said, as your sword has made women childless, so will your mother be childless among women. And Samuel put Agag to death before Yahawah at Gilgal. Then Samuel left for Ramah, but Saul went up to his home in the Geba of Saul. Until the day Samuel died, he did not go to see Saul again, though Samuel mourned for him, and the Lord regretted that he had made Saul king over Israel. So there's a bunch of interesting parallels tonight with that first book that we read. Did you have any commentary, Jason?
Oh, no, it's good setup, though.
You want me to keep going, or do you want to read the next book, the next chapter?
I read a bunch. You can keep going until you're tired.
Okay. It says Samuel anoints David. So it says here in 16, Yahawah said to Samuel, how long will you mourn for Saul? Since I have rejected him as king over Israel, fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I am sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen one of his sons to be king. So again, we get the Bethlehem. Bethlehem means the city of David. It's also the city that Yahawahashai was born in. But Samuel said, how can I go? If Saul hears about it, he will kill me. And Yahawah said, take a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to Yahawah. Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what to do. You are to anoint for me the one I indicate. So Samuel did what Yahawah said. When he arrived at Bethlehem, the elders of the town trembled when they met him. And they asked, do you come in peace, sir? Samuel replied, yes, in peace. I have come to sacrifice to Yahawah. Consecrate yourselves and come to the sacrifice with me. Then he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. And when they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab and thought, surely the Lord's anointed stands before the Lord. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but Yahawah looks at the heart. So again, over and over and over again, I tell people the scriptures always talk about the heart, your compassion, your love, your passion for people. This is the most important thing. Then Jesse called Abinadab and had him pass in front of Samuel next. But Samuel said, Yahawah has not chosen this one either. And Jesse then had Shammah pass by. But Samuel said, nor has this Lord, Yahawah, chosen this one. And Jesse had 7 of his sons pass before Samuel. But Samuel said to him, Yahawah hath not chosen these. So he asked Jesse, are these all the sons you have? There is still the youngest, Jesse answered. He is tending the sheep. Samuel said, send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives. So he sent for him and had him brought in. He was glowing with health and had a fine appearance and was very handsome in feature. Then Yahawah said, rise and anoint him. This is the one. And so Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day, the Spirit of Yahawah came powerfully upon David. And then Samuel went to Ramah, David's and Saul's service. Now the Spirit of Yahawah hath departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from Yahawah tormented him. Saul's attendant said to him, see, an evil spirit from Yahawah is tormenting you. Let our Lord command his servants here to search for someone who can play the harp. And he will play when the evil spirit from Yahawah comes unto you, and you will feel better. So Saul said to his attendants, find someone who plays the harp for me and bring him here. And one of the servants answered, I have seen the son of Jesse of Bethlehem, who knows how to play the harp. He is a brave man and a warrior. He speaks well and is fine looking. And he is Yahawah, and his Yahawah Elohim is with him. And then Saul sent messengers to Jesse and said, "Send me your son David, who is with the sheep." So Jesse took a donkey, he loaded it with bread, he filled up a wineskin and a young goat and sent them with David to Saul. And David came to Saul and entered his service, and Saul liked him very much. And David became one of his armor bearers. Then Saul sent for Jesse, saying, "Allow David to remain in my service, for I am pleased with him." Whenever the spirit from Yahawah came unto Saul, David would take up his harp and play. Then relief would come to Saul, and he would feel better, and the evil spirit would leave him. That's just incredible, right? I don't know if everybody else have read this.
Yeah,
but
so
David was like a guitar player. Right?
Yeah, he soothed the soul with the music, right?
Mm-hmm. We constantly get that music's satanic, but all of a sudden we have David, who's got a lyre or a little harp or a guitar, and he's able to ward off evil spirits with it. I'll continue on here. David and Goliath. So now the Philistines gathered their forces for war and assembled at the Sakah in Judah. They pitched a camp on the Ephas Danim between Soko and Azekah. Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped in the valley of Elah and drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. The Philistines occupied one hill and the Israelites the other, with the valley in between them. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span. So we could guess at this. It was probably like, I don't know, between 10. How many feet do you think 6 cubits and a span would be? Should we look it up?
I've heard roughly 11 and a half feet.
This one says equals about 7.8 feet.
Okay.
And then down here it says 11 and a half feet almost, 11.35.
Yeah, that's the one I heard before.
Okay. So between 7 and 11 and a half feet. So he had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. On his legs, he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels. His shield bearer went ahead of him. It says here in 8, Goliath stood and shouted at the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." Then the Philistine said, "This day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other." On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and the other Israelites were dismayed and terrified. Now David was one of the sons of the Ephraite named Jesse, who was from Bethlehem in Judah. So again, the southern regions of Israel back in the day was called Judah, and Bethlehem and Jerusalem are in the province of Judah, right? Jesse had 8 sons, and in Saul's time, he was very old. Jesse's 3 oldest sons had followed Saul to the war. The firstborn was Elab, the second Abinadab, and the third was Shammah. David was the youngest. The 3 oldest followed Saul, but David went back and forth from Saul to tend his father's sheep in Bethlehem. So while he was at war, while he was running down with the guitar, he was running back home to take care of his sheep. Isn't that hilarious? So for 40 days, the Philistine came forward every morning and every evening and took his stand. Now Jesse said to his son David, "Take this ephah of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers, and hurry to their camp. Take along these 10 cheeses to their commander of their unit. See how your brothers are, and bring back some assurance from them. They are with Saul and all the men of Israel in the valley of Elah, fighting against the Philistines." They're not really fighting. So early in the morning, David left the flock in the care of the shepherd, loaded up and set out, as Jesse had directed. He reached the camp as the army was going out to its battle positions, shouting the war cry. Israel and the Philistines were drawing up their lines facing each other. David left his things with the keeper of supplies and ran to the battle lines and asked his brothers how they were. As he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance. and David heard it. And whenever the Israelites saw the man, they all fled from him in great fear. Now the Israelites had been saying, "Do you see how this man keeps coming out? He comes out to defy Israel. The king will give great wealth to the man who kills him. He will also give him his daughter in marriage and will exempt his family from taxes in Israel." Again, taxes coming up again, right? So if you could kill Goliath, you'd get no taxes.
Tax exempt. Yeah.
In Canada, you have to be a native to get that, right? Right? That's how they don't pay taxes. Because they lived in teepees barefoot or whatever. David asked the men standing near him, "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and who removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living Elohim?" And they repeated to him what they had been saying and told him, "This is what will be done for the man who kills him." When Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him and asked, "Why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in our wilderness?" They're worried about the sheep, right? The tough brothers. "I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle. Now what have I done?" said David. "Can't I speak?" He then turned away to someone else and brought up the same matter. And the men answered him as before. What David said was overheard and reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." And Saul replied, "You are not able to go out and fight against this Philistine. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David said unto Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it and struck it and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair and struck it and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. The uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living Elohim. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." And Saul said unto David, "Go, and the Yahawah be with you." Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic and put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet upon his head. And David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around because he was not used to them. He's never put armor on, right? It's so hilarious.
I can't walk around in this. Like,
I said I'd let you guys know why he's called king, right? He's like, "I cannot go with these." He said unto Saul, "Because I am not used to them." He took them off. Then he took off his staff, put it down. He lifted up his staff. He chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, from the river bottom, put them into the pouch of his shepherd's bag with his sling in his hand, and approached unto the Philistine. Meanwhile, the Philistine, with his shield bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was little more than a boy, glowing in wealth and handsome, and he despised him. And he said unto David, "Am I a dog that you have come at me with sticks?" And the Philistine cursed David by his Elohims. "Come here," he said, "and I will give your flesh to the birds and to the animals." And David said unto the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin? But I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the Elohim of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day Yahawah will deliver you into my hands. I will strike you down and cut your head off. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals. And the whole world will know that there is one Elohim in Israel. And all those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that Yahawah saves." So that right there is something that a lot of people might not know. Again, tying everything in together tonight. It is not by sword or spear that Yahawah saves.
Yeah, you don't have to stock up guns and ammo. Not
I mean, you can if you like it, if you're practicing.
Yeah,
whatever.
But it's not going to help you in this battle.
Salvation came through Yahawahashai, right, through his passion. For the battle is Yahawah's, and he will give all of you into our hands, he went on to state. And the Philistine moved closer to attack him, and David ran quickly towards the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead, and the stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down onto the ground. You get the... Everybody stops banging, they're all banging, and then Philistine hits the ground. So David triumphant over the Philistine with a sling and a stone without a sword in his hand and struck down the Philistine and killed him. David then ran over and stood over him, and he took hold of the Philistine's own sword and drew it from the sheath, and he killed him, and he cut off his head with his own sword. And when the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron. Their dead were strewn along the Sharam road to Gath and Ekron. When the Israelites returned from chasing the Philistines, they plundered their camps. David took the Philistine's head and brought it to Jerusalem. And he put the Philistines' weapons in his own tent. So David kept Goliath's weapons. He kept them, right? Just the story. And as Saul watched David going out to meet the Philistine, he said to Abner, commander of the army, "Abner, whose son is that young man?" And Abner replied, "As surely as you live, your majesty, I don't know." And the king said, "Find out whose son this young man is." As soon as David returned from killing the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul. And David, standing, holding the Philistine's head, "Whose son are you, young man?" Saul asked him. And David said, "I am the son of your servant Jesse of Bethlehem." That's,
Ooh. Bang.
That's quite the story, you guys. How he did that was pretty incredible. He went to Jerusalem. He couldn't even wear the armor. But so the most important thing that we need to take away from this story is that we should have no fear. We should have no fear. If it's time for us to do what the Father wants, it'll be done. And if we are to go into a guillotine situation, that'll be a great way to martyr ourselves, right? But the key thing is that David was a leader because he had faith. He had faith, right? So that's the strongest power that Christians wield, is faith, right? Faith and love. And then you'll see fruits of the Spirit, which become gentleness, kindness, patience, commitment, all these different things. They become the fruits of your love and fear. Like, if you're in this realm right now and you don't fear that you're not doing what the Creator made you to do, there might be something wrong with you spiritually, because we are actually here to fight for truth. That's why we're in this oppression. We're all being judged and weighed, right? Everything is being measured right now. So be like David, have no fear, speak truth, stand up, become a leader.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with leaders as long as they're not wicked. You need good leaders. David was a great leader. The best. And so Yahawahashai is like in the kingship of David. No. So that puts incredible pressure on David as being an incredible king, right? Because that kingship comes through him to Yahawahashai. And we do need leaders. We absolutely do need leaders, but they have to be good, righteous ones.
Yes, they have to be fear of the Father. The beginning of fear is the path to the righteousness. Because if you're not in fear of, you don't have a conscience, right? That's a bad sign. If you do something that's bad and it doesn't bother you, like that, you need spiritual help, right? But I'm pretty sure everybody that tunes in doesn't need this.
No,
we're just going into it. But again, David was a righteous leader with no fear, stood up to this giant, right? And slew him, killed him, did exactly what the Spirit put in his heart to do. So we too are spiritual Davids, okay? We yield the same power as long as you're righteous and you're doing things with your heart. Again, it was incredible how all of the stuff tied together about, no taxes, as well as the scriptures where, David, he actually was a leader. We're talking about not submitting to bad leaders. We're supposed to be like David, have faith, leaders. I hope I inspire people to just be strong, be bold. We're not supposed to be these pansy sissies, right? We're to do what the Father's will is. He is the ruler over the kingdom, not Satan's. They're jokes. They're scumbags, and they are going to pay. Same with all the people that are doing all the oppression right now. Again, in the time period that Romans 13 was written, there were people that were being hung up on torture stakes and actually lit as candles in the streets. Like, submitting to the authorities had multiple different, they knew that if they did certain things, they were dead. They were dead. So there's always a fine balance. We are to be as wise as serpents, but yet gentle as doves. These are the types of things that we learn in the scriptures. I thought, Jason, as an overall, you could take the screen share when you want, that tonight had a great dual nature to it, non-dualistic dual nature. We had a good leader, and then we had a scripture talking about how we should act around other leaders. We got the best of both, right? We should always follow the righteous leader, and we should never follow the one that doesn't do the righteous things. That's the moral of the entire scripture of Romans 13, right? Do what is right in the Father's eyes, and you don't have to worry. But if you do stuff that is wrong, you should be very afraid, it said, right? Those are the actual scriptures. So I constantly just do what is right. Tell the truth. If you make a mistake, just fess up to it right away. Just, I just made a mistake. And you move on. Jason?
I thought it's been great. I say we wrap it up here.
Take the screen share back.
I'll give you a screen share in just a second. I'm going to
Jerry wants to bring that up. No, we're not going to talk about that tonight, Jerry. We talked about King David, put him in his rightful place, and the Romans 13 psyop that just because it says to submit to authorities that we're supposed to follow these cuck, satanic, evil governments. Absolutely not. Anyone says that to you, send them the link to this video. Show them, make them watch it, make them study it. And if they don't and they refuse to do the work, then it's on them even worse, right? The blood is off our hands. We are absolved from blood guilt on this topic.
Absolutely. So it's been a great night. We got to go through one of the great debunks of the way Revelation 13 gets used so much by Satanists.
Romans 13.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And then compare it to what a good, righteous leader is all about. We took it to King David. So I loved it. I'm looking forward to more. Mm-hmm. We'll probably be live this next Wednesday, but I want to let people know that we are now coming into decent weather in Texas. So it won't be long here, and we're going to be back to work. And we still plan on maintaining the Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, but once we go back into secular work and get that whole process moving, it's got to be fluid, because sometimes we get caught up at work a little bit. So it's been great. I hope everybody's doing well. We'll see you all Wednesday. Where's the only place anybody's going to hear this, brother?
Screecher? Only Yahawahashai News Network.
You walk, you run, you climb, and you fall again. You crawl, you fight, you break apart tonight. But I am the voice that keeps on calling out to you, lighting up the dark. I turn chaos into art. So if you're falling under, or if you're letting go, don't you worry tonight, I will hold you. Don't you worry, my child, I'll stay by your side. In the middle of it, in the middle of it, I will hold you tight. You hope, you dream, you chase, you bleed, a story in the and found. I'm here and now. And underneath these stars, I see just who you are. Don't you worry tonight, I will hold you. Don't you worry, my child, I'll stay by your side. In the middle of it, in the middle of it, I will hold you, hold you, hold you tight. You don't have to worry, you don't have to hide. I know you're weary, weary from the fight. You don't have to fear now, I'm here by your side. And I'm gonna wait here, wait with you tonight. Don't you worry tonight, I will hold you. Don't you worry, my child, I'll stay by your side. In the middle of it, in the middle of it, I will hold you, hold you, hold you tight. Don't you worry tonight, I will hold you. Don't you worry, my child, I'll stay by your side. In the middle of it, in the middle of it, I will hold you, hold you, hold you tight. Hold you tight. Hold you tight.